What do we need to do to get it right? Could that be one of the factors? We'll find out as we go on to Mr. Tony Nnadi, who is a legal practitioner. He's a co-convener, Movement for New Nigeria, and Secretary General, Lower Nigeria Congress. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sir Billy.
Well, so much different perspectives really about what we need to do to be together, to continue being together and strengthen our resolve to stay together. Yes, we did put out a poll, which we'll come to much later. But in light of this theme that we've got, Nigeria 60 together, what stands out for you in that particular theme if we need to at least all achieve and point to what we can call the Nigerian dream?
Oh, well, I was just listening to the newspaper reports and all kinds of all the things that have been happening in the last, in course of this week, even just this week alone. And we had the Vice President raise alarm, Yemi Osinbajo, raise alarm that the walls of Nigeria are cracked and that if nothing is done very urgently too, that the walls will come down, that the union might collapse on account of those cracks. And then we also saw people jump out from one section to condemn him for pointing out that crack. But the matter goes beyond the crack for us. It goes all the way. That crack, I sit here as a statesman, as one involved hands-on for 20 years plus, looking for solutions to these problems that are now, prevalent and manifest everywhere. The cracks are coming from the foundation upon which we're building. The cracks didn't just happen overnight. The cracks came from the wrong foundation upon which we have insisted on building. And if we're discussing 60 years now, looking back at the fact that it was the election of independence that led to Awolowo being sent to prison, and the response to that leading to May 29, 1962 suspension of the constitution of the Western region of the time, leading further to the breakdown of law and order in Western region that became Wild Wild West, which was what the soldiers, Ademoyega, Njogwa and co, came in, young men who were just, looking out for their country. It was that commotion that they tried to come to arrest 6 years into independence. That was what became January 15 of 1966. And then the basic agreement for being in a union got truncated because we became a union because we were going to be a federation. We became a union because we were going to be a federation. The Sadona, we remember in 1953 when the motion for independence was moved, the northern delegation blocked it because they wanted more autonomy. They didn't want to be mixed up with people in such a manner that they would lose their identity, their culture, their control over their own affairs. And so the 8 points of demand that Sadona raised in rejecting that motion for independence in 1953 became the definition of the depth of autonomy which was acceptable to the North at the time to become part of the union that emerged in 1960. And so it was the collapse, it was the abandonment of that arrangement, which we call federalism, that became the reason for all of the other things that have now gone wrong. And I was just looking at the video of Senator Adeyeye's lamentations on the floor of the Senate. It is the constitution we have. I have a copy here too. The constitution that has emerged, the one that is on the table now, is the aggregation of all of the things that went wrong since this time, since the 60s, almost this last 55 years. So that's how we came. That's how we came to these cracks, building on that foundation that collapsed 6 years into our independence and refusing to listen.
But the thing about that is that,
yes, in
spite of all,
yes,
we've had several constitution drafting committees, different governments, 60s, 70s, 90s, and I mean, at least many of them headed by civilians. Yes. And they said that they had gone round the country. Yes. In fact, Justice Nikitobi, when he headed, he said Nigerians opted for 1979 constitution. So many people they give the impression that, look, people had gone round, collated memorandum, and Nigerians opted for that 1979, which there isn't any fundamental difference between 99 and 79 anyway. Yeah. So where then lies the problem?
Well, we've been, when you choose to deceive yourself, you begin to reap the kind of outcomes we have now. The problem, which they've been evading, trying to avoid, but they are now face to face with the consequences of that recklessness of refusing to diagnose what the problem is, just deciding to treat, like doctors who do diagnosis before prescription, before treatment. What we've been doing in all this attempt to go do it this way or that way is we've been avoiding the diagnosis, the correct diagnosis. The problem is that constitution making is not the business of government. And what has happened, government is like, I'm sure our people can relate with companies and their memo and articles. The memo and articles of the company is the exclusive responsibility of the owners of the company to submit themselves into the enterprise, into what becomes XYZ Limited. And what happened to Nigeria in 1966 was that the managers, because the government is in the position of hired management, the owners of the enterprise are the ones who could have been countries of their own if not for the Union of Nigeria. Let's get that straight. And the discussions that must be had, the process that will lead to having a constitution that can stand, is a discussion between those shareholders of that enterprise called Nigeria. And who are those shareholders? We back up from behind 1960 to see a Western region that had their constitution as at their own constitution emerged as at 1957. Then Eastern region followed right after. And then it was in 1959 that the Northern region came to where they had their own constitutions. There are like 3 countries negotiating how to form some kind of union, like Germany and Portugal and Spain discussing whether they could form European Union. That was the kind of arrangement that Nigeria, was agreed to be. And from the point in 1966 when the 5 constitutions that defined that union got toppled by the hired management, because government in its 3 arms represent the hired management of the enterprise. The owners of the enterprise are the Yoruba bloc that could be country of 55 million people, the Eastern bloc that could be country of 70 million people. Forget about the divisions that were introduced in 3 days to the declaration of Biafra in 1967. Then Northern region, that could be country of its own. And so it was in refusing to recognize that that Nigeria ceased to be a federation from the point in 1966 that those 5 constitutions that defined the union up to that time, the federation up to that time, got jettisoned, and we had, we began to have by decree a centralized, instrument, the unitary instruments that have metamorphosed into 1999 Constitution. Let us remember that it was on the 27th of May in 1967 that the 4 regions which federated, the 4 regions that had autonomy, the 4 regions that had ownership and control over their assets, it was from the point in 1967 that those 4 regions were broken into 12 states, and their assets progressively got taken over by the federal government, that we ceased to be a federation. But we kept pretending, such that by 1975, when Murtala Mohammed took over from Gowon, the first task he gave, of course, the entire commotion of 66 led to war, in which more than 3 million people got lost in one part of the country, in the eastern part of the country, and the Biafra War. And from that point of 1970, when the war ended, instead of going to examine what truncated our federation, we patched it up with all kinds of things. They say NYSC, for instance.
If I could jump in, because
yes.
in 1975,
yes,
General Mohammed at that time to set up a constitution drafting committee.
Yes.
And it was headed by then eminent jurist Chief F.R.A. Williams.
Yes.
So does it mean that all of these issues were lost on them when they came up with the constitution?
They were as they were wrong that time, so are the ones who are discussing what to do about amending constitution in National Assembly wrong today. It is not within the legislative mandate of the National Assembly to make constitution. Constitution making is the exclusive business of those who will submit their lands and their peoples into a union. The National Assembly is only a part of the management team, one arm of the government. And so by 1966, it was that management team that toppled the enterprise and removed the owners from the memo and articles of the enterprise, and now the federal government became the owner of everybody and everything progressively, to the point now where we have 68 items on the exclusive list, to the point now where even the matter of electing who will govern us is only an INEC in Abuja that will have to process everybody that will emerge, to the point now where we can secure ourselves, the matter of simple policing, to the point where all of the economic assets belong to the center. We now saw, we've come to where there's a waterway control bill that is now meant to take over all bodies of waters across the land, with some kilometers of land adjoining it, such bodies of water to the left and right. So the center, the federal government that was set up to be a union office for these owners of enterprise, has now toppled the owners and become the owner of the enterprise to the exclusion of those ones. And those owners are shouting and crying, let us go back to discussing so that we can rebuild the foundation upon which we can, upon which this union can be sustained.
I think it
they
is
are refusing
important
to listen.
Okay, no,
and we see people now moving progressively towards a self-help.
Just one moment.
Yes.
I think there is a need to define how we can solidify that foundation so we don't go back to where we are trying to get out from.
Yes.
Well, depending on what historical accounts you read, some would also tell you that it was the politicians that after all the rockers that followed the First Republic, it was the politicians themselves that invited the military to come take over because they are not having it easy managing things themselves. So they wanted the military to come over. As a matter of fact, when the military came in to try to manage the unrest at the time, they just said, you know what, just go ahead, manage this thing for a while, we'll back off. And the military wanted to hand over to the people back, and they said no. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that First Republic had the parliamentary system of government, and which, as you said, these regions championing things. And economically, a number of people have said that economically, each of the blocks were doing quite well. The Granite Pyramids in the north, the coal in the east and the cocoa in the west were doing quite well and all of that. But it was the same politicians that couldn't really agree on a number of things, as they are still finding it difficult to agree on a number of things now. So if we're going to get this country right, is it a problem of the system of the constitution, the system of government, the constitution, or the people?
Hold it there. The answer lies in completing what I was saying in response to the last question about how we came about the constitution we're building upon. There are 3 items, and I want everybody to listen carefully. I'm saying this not just as a lawyer. I'm saying this as a lawyer with specialty in jurisprudence. In that field of law, my students are the professors of law and the senior advocates in Nigeria. We are in this building now. There are 3 components: the foundation, the vertical column, and the roofing structure. That's basic. Now, we hear about polity all the time, overheating the polity. We have the polity, that's the definition of the union, as done by, as you will find in the Constitution. That is the foundation. Then it is that foundation that moderates and defines the politics, PDP, APC, and all of what happens in elections and how people get elected. That's the vertical column. The roof is where you're now discussing the policies that come from that politics. In those three compartments, you come back to the definition of democracy. Government of the people means the foundation that the people, in exercise of their sovereignty, decide the ultimate rules, which you call the Constitution. By the people means having so decided, the politics that happens in the place is governed by that, that Constitution. And then the policies for the people is where the people begin to get benefits. But Nigeria's democracy, so-called democracy, does not pass any of these three legs of test. Back to the question of Chamberlain about 75. What happened in 75 was that Murtala Mohammed came in and basically gathered all of what they got by brigandage from the war to convert into constitutional instrument that will now be permanent. And he commissioned Rotimi Williams, who in turn brought in Ben Wabweze, and they crafted, according to the instruction of Murtala Mohammed and whoever worked with him, they crafted what became the draft that went to the Constituent Assembly in 1977, like building a house from the roof. Instead of getting the constituents to come to discuss the balance of what they could not agree on in Aburi, that was what was required at that point, to get back to being a federation, let everybody recommit. They drafted this and put before the Constituent Assembly, in fairness to the Constituent Assembly of 77, because by 76, Murtala Mohammed was already out of, having been chucked out. The Constituent Assembly rejected most of, they didn't accept the states that had been created. It had become 19 as at the time. The Constituent Assembly did not accept presidential system because it will accumulate power in the manner we have seen, and all kinds of things that eventually made it to that country. It was Obasanjo on the 21st of September in 1978, having received the clean draft of what came from Constituent Assembly that would have taken us back to something better. 17 amendments. We are diagnosing how we got to where we are. If we don't get it, if we don't become honest about it and get to the root of the matter, this house will collapse on us. That's what Osinbajo was saying.
If I could follow up on that, because
yes.
if that were the case, then there was another one.
Let me just land so that we can know. My landing is that on the 21st of September in 1978, Obasanjo went on national broadcast to introduce 17 amendments to the finished work of the Constituent Assembly. So the 1979 Constitution was not a product of the people of Nigeria, as many will want to claim. It was those amendments that removed everything that would have taken us back to resuming our status as a federation. And if you can imagine that the states, we now have 36 on viable units that they say is the federating units. The states, if we had gone back to the regions that will federate, we wouldn't have these 36 states now, nor the 704 local government areas, right, and all of the things that now make the union unworkable, totally unworkable. This is 68 items of exclusive list. How did Land Use Act get into the Constitution? So, how did NYSC, to tell you the kind of things that are continuing to crack our walls? The NYSC was ostensibly brought in to make young people mix up so that they can understand their countries better, their country better. But that's the front end. At the back end, the purpose of NYSC was to take the children of Port Harcourt, the children of Warri, the children of Lagos, to go and perish in Kaura Namoda, in Biu, in Potiskum.
If that were
While
the
children of Sokoto and Kano and Meduguri are sent to Port Harcourt to be retained in NNPC, to be retained in NPA. But that's how we came about that, and they put it inside the Constitution in such a manner that you can't change it.
What about the fact that in 1995,
yes,
there was another committee headed by Justice Nikki Toby?
Yes.
So they went through the same process, asked questions of the same people,
yeah,
and then he said Nigerians said they prefer to settle for the 1979 Constitution. So
the meeting is holding the meeting like all the pretenses. Obasanjo has had a conference. The other people, Jonathan called his own conference. The pretense is that the government is now the one to hand down constitution to the people. The meeting that will produce a constitution is between the Yoruba as people who can become country of their own, like we are hearing them say now, the eastern part, that could be Biafra or anything they call themselves as country of their own. Those are the people quarreling. Those are the people you have to settle the terms of their relationship. That is what the constitution does. The terms of coming together. Bola Ige even broke it down for us. He said that in all the demand for sovereign conference, it is to answer two questions. Are we prepared to continue as one union? If the answer is yes, and that's by referendum, should we then list the terms of that being in that union? That's the article, like the memo and the article. When you have a memo that is toppled, the memo is the company, creates the company. The article now lists all of how the owners of the company will relate. There are two different documents.
All right. We'll come back to this in just a moment and get your concluding thoughts. Please stay with us. Welcome back. It's our concluding moments now. Go ahead, Kaide.
Well, as much as there's a lot of value in looking at where we're coming from, how we got here, it's also important to, look at where we are. The reality is on ground right now. Yes, the National Assembly has, put in motion that constitution review process, 13 thematic areas. That seems to be, the way forward right now. Now, you gave that analogy about the building, the foundation, the vertical column, and of course the roof. Some ask, where is the plan, the blueprint in all of this? So the challenge we have right now, is it a constitution thing? Can we ever get a perfect constitution? Or is it in the relationship between the foundation and the walls? I think the people and the managers, as it were. Where is our solution in all of this?
Right. The matter is simple and straightforward. We have abandoned the foundation upon which we could have built, and we have been building on the wrong foundation. When you find yourself in that kind of a situation, you get back to, working the foundation and then building on it. Anything less than that, whatever you are doing, and which is what the Vice President is raising alarm about, is going to collapse on you. And in order to avoid that, like I said at the beginning, what the processes have been involved in that came from a meeting of all, the PRONACO that we called in 2005, involving all the nationalities in the country, coming to decide how and whether and how they will carry on in that union, that came out with a product in which even our present president, Muhammad Buhari, was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that conference. We had all of those who were carrying arms against Nigeria at the time. We pleaded with them to put aside their guns. Asari, and his Niger Delta Volunteer Force, Gani Adams, and his OPC, those who were flying Biafran flags all over the place. The whole place was breaking down. And we said, look, let's not continue to wait indefinitely for the managers of this, our enterprise. Let the owners of the enterprise go into a discussion. And we came out with a draft that should have been able to take us back to, where we begin to build, but the government refused to come along. Today, looking at where we are, I can tell us authoritatively that unless we accept that our social contract is damaged, the constitution is the social contract. What the LNC and the MNN alliance partners, the three blocks to the east, to the west, and to the middle belt, are coming together to present to the country at this time by way of what we call constitutional force majeure, to declare an emergency around this situation that's about to consume us, because blood is flowing all over the place. And if we pretend we do not realize that that danger can consume both we and the union, then we are just waiting to be consumed. And so it is to present Nigeria and all of those entrapped in it as at now, and a framework and an orderly process to ease itself out of the bind it finds itself under this unitarianism, like South Africa did with the apartheid constitution. It wasn't the parliament that went discussing. Those who sit in Abuja and tell us now that they are going to amend, they are committing treason against the rest of us, because our sovereignty has not been submitted to them on account of voting at the elections. Our sovereignty remains with us.
But the
National Assembly makes law according to constitution. That's
but
what
the arrangement we have, pardon me, the
yes.
arrangement we have is representation, basically
yes.
saying that one person represents a group of people.
Yes.
So the voice of that group is heard from that one person. So in terms of the National Assembly instituting that process, isn't it the voice of the people that should prevail through the representatives?
No, their mandate, that's what I'm trying to explain. The mandate of the National Assembly, we did not submit our sovereignty to them to take away and do as they like. We only mandated them for the 4 years to go and be in the management team of that company, you know, to make laws according to the constitution we already made. Exactly. According to the memo and article. They've departed from the memo and article. Everybody who comes forward to swear to defend and uphold this constitution of 99 is telling the rest of us that he will prefer us to remain the slaves we are. He will prefer us to be killed the way we are being killed in the Middle Belt and elsewhere.
Sorry, let me get this clear. Yes. Are you implying that the representatives are not representing the people? That's one thing. Are you saying that there's a restriction in terms of the constitution they're operating in?
No, their mandate, like the analogy I gave about the company, the owners, and their memo and articles, is not the hired management of a company that will go to write memo and article. That is what has been going on since 1967. The management we hired have become the owners of our enterprise. And we're saying that we have to move on to how the owners of the enterprise now will sit down and work out whether they want to continue, and that's by referendum.
Speaking about the how.
Yes.
So, okay, that point which you just made.
Yes.
So what if that clause is provided for in our laws? Will that address the challenges?
Let me tell you what will have to change. The preamble to the Constitution that claims that we, the people, have solemnly resolved to live together as one indivisible union, that is the biggest complaint that has to be resolved, and it's not in the place of National Assembly to resolve it. It's the constituents, the Yoruba that now say they want to leave the union, the Biafran people that say they want to leave the union, and the Middle Belt that say they don't want to have anything to do with their next neighbors. Those are the ones who should be discussing whether they want to recommit, and it is by referendum.
Again, I go to that. You've talked about the referendum. Yes. Ultimately, there still has to be representation at some point, right?
Yes. So it must be a body with constituent powers, not the National Assembly. Is usurping our sovereignty by pretending they are the ones who now have to decide for us. The mandate to decide constitution is not part of the legislative mandate when you vote an election to go and be represented. There is the constitution, there is the law. The constitution is the mold from which laws are made.
We have had such conversations in the past.
Yes.
We have had sovereign national conferences. We had constitutional conferences, and we are still where we are.
Because the system have been lying to itself. Which sovereign conference have we had after Aburi? After Aburi, we've not had any sovereign conference. It was in Aburi that there was a sovereign. The last sovereign conference was in Aburi. The only other attempt was in Pronaco, where everybody came, but the government refused to come along. Obasanjo actually went on air to say that we were committing treason if we called a meeting of the owners of the enterprise.
One moment, which goes back to the question I asked the other time about whether it's a problem of the constitution, which you have responded to, or the system of government we are running, because we still have to operate through a system of government.
It is the constitution.
People themselves.
No. It is the constitution. One controls the other. If you put a foundation for a bungalow, and you begin to erect something that will carry 40-story structure pillars and begin to take it up, it will crash on you. We're saying that the problem we have to solve is to go to that foundation in which the Yoruba and the eastern part and the Middle Belt is agreeing. They are agreeing to submit their lands and their people. That preamble that says we the people have solemnly resolved is saying that the Ijaw has resolved to submit their lands and their assets into the union. It's saying that the Yoruba had resolved to submit their lands and their assets. It's a lie. We can't build on that lie any further.
Let me see if we can just go through the thematic areas that the National Assembly put forward. Areas for constitution review. Talks about gender equality for women and girls, federal structure, and power devolution, which I think you have also talked about. I don't know if that handles that area for you. There's also local government and its autonomy. If you go all the way down, you see residency and indigent provisions, the National Assembly, even state creation is captured in those thematic areas, 13 of them. I didn't list all of them, but from the ones I listed, federal structure, power devolution, local government, its autonomy, state creation, residency, indigent provisions, don't you think they at least handle some of the issues you have raised about the owners and the managers?
They are doing the mere fact that they are sitting, telling us that they want that have to now decide for us. At a time we're saying we have to decide for ourselves whether we want to be in this union. They are committing treason against the rest of us, and the owners of the enterprise are working out how they will seize the initiative by themselves to provide some kind of framework and process that will be orderly. The constitutional force majeure is to say that our social contract has gone bad. The basis of being in one union have been truncated, and the owners of the enterprise now wish to bring an end to this imposition that is tormenting them, that has seized their assets, that is now exposed them to where they are being eliminated for extermination as a people on their spaces. Right. And so it is the right to self-determination that have been truncated by the jettisoning of the constitution that was built on that right. The meetings of Lancaster House before independence, was in respect to the self-determination right of the units that will federate. Our federation has collapsed. If we continue to pretend the country will collapse on us.
Thank you.